Charles, your cat is literally in the same position I get into on the floor after all my unit tests fail after a single line change. If all of your unit tests are failing after one single line change, then you are not writing, uh, what do you call it? Small enough tests. It should only fail for one thing. You do.
Yeah, there's that rule, your tests shouldn't rely on each other. And if that's the case, you have too many collaborators or your collaborators aren't split up correctly. So if you have multiple tests failing, pull out the old mocks or substitutes and
Mhm.
start mocking a lot more of those features.
An interesting way that I read about it described is your tests should all be able to run in parallel. And I thought that was an interesting way to look at it, that you should be able to run every single one of your tests at the exact same time, and they shouldn't affect each other. It's just like a fancy way of saying, yeah, they should be completely decoupled from each other. So, and the worst part, that one line was a comment.
Yeah.
You should never use comments. Self-documenting code. The only comments I ever write are to-dos or when I have some like regular expression that who's going to understand a regular expression. So I'll drop a comment on here that says, this just checks if this is a phone number.
Or the occasional "here be dragons, don't touch this code. It does something and it works. Leave it alone."
When I was in college and I was like kind of more idealistic and I don't know, I'm passionate about writing code, but whatever. I was super idealistic and young and passionate. I would put little like, so I cringe to think about it, like little animal pictures in like ASCII, like a little whale. Oh man, I'm gonna burn those repositories to the ground.
I literally, when I built my first personal website, I did it. Well, not my first. I definitely built. Without dating myself too much, I built a DHTML Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan site when I was a lot younger. Yeah, so let's skip over that one. When I built my first corporate one for myself as an entity for doing contract work, just to show off, I did it in Node.js and I built a preprocessor and a loader, and I had it that every time the page generated itself, it would write a different ASCII meme into the console for every page load. It was dumb, really dumb. But yeah, it's sometimes fun to play with that stuff.
Yeah, it's funny too that a lot of people don't really realize that. Well, I can't really speak about a lot of industries, but the industry I work in right now is compliance and security. So I'm not allowed to put anything in the code that like that. Like it would go against contracts, So it's like that's so boring. But hey, if you're writing your own game, go ahead. Put ASCII comments if you want. Would you agree with this sentiment that the only times you should put comments are for to-dos, obscure code like regular expression, and like you said, comments that just say don't touch this? Is there any other reason you'd want to put comments in code?
Um,
Maybe tutorials, obviously. If you're like if I'm giving out code on my Patreon,
oh,
for
sure,
video.
if you're explaining stuff. But even then, I personally find that I would prefer to have running examples that I could have in comparison without the actual comments if I could get away with it. In fact, I'd even push back on to-dos. To-dos are something that should be in your backlog, not in your code.
That's fair. That's fair.
Now, I sometimes use it as a bookmark. At least I used to before I realized both Writer and Visual Studio have a bookmark tool. So you can actually you can even get other plugins for it. So even to-dos shouldn't really be used because they're all it does is tell you that code should go here and nothing else. Though an interesting point on the whole comment thing is something Bob Martin said once I thought was really interesting. I never thought about it this way, but if you ever come across commented out code, don't even read it. And it's like, what? Don't read it. And your first thought as a programmer is you panic and go, but it could do something important. And if I have to do some code there, if I have to add a feature, I need to know what it does.
That mentality is the problem.
Yeah, and then especially because you're thinking, well, I'll just comment it out someday and it might do what I need it to do, or it might have something. And then you realize this code could have been written months ago. In fact, you can probably even check. it won't even work anymore. There's a very good chance a lot of the entities and assets and declarations are wrong. And now you're going to uncomment it and start debugging commented out previous code that somebody wrote that you don't even know what it does.
Yeah.
So providing you're using source control, which you should always use source control, never not use source control. If you ever see commented out code, even code you wrote yourself, it's meant to indicate what your goal was to do here, but that doesn't matter because clearly you either didn't do it or you moved on to something else. When you come back to reevaluate the problem, all your old code is going to do is lock you into the previous mindset of what you previously thought you might have possibly needed to do. So delete it and ask yourself, what am I actually doing? Let's write the code here. And that's still very hard for me. I still stop every time and I go, I'll just skim it once just in case there's something important. And like I can't bring myself to immediately delete it, but as a mindset, it's a very good one. I think it's something to keep in mind. The point of a comment should be to elucidate, not to confuse you further. And if you have comments in your code, it's usually because you didn't describe it well enough in what you were doing, or the code has gotten so complicated it literally needs someone to write a book beside it to explain what it does. And that's insane if you think about what that really means, you know?
That code you described, that's called zombie code. Zombie
Yeah.
code. It's like, it's dead. Oh no, my camera's going to die, so we might have to wrap this stream up soon.
Zombie camera to go with it.
Yeah, right.